with a little review of the original Final Fantasy I. Let's get the music back in. There it is. Thank you, Nobuo Uematsu, for uploading all of these soundtracks to the streaming services, by the way, in their original forms, which I don't think is... The man didn't have to do this. Like the OG NES and Famicom scores. But here we are. Final Fantasy I, where it all began. Same as with last time. Spoiler warning. I mean, this game is almost 40 years old at this point, but still, spoiler warning. If you want to play it yourself, do it. I can only recommend it. Final Fantasy I was not the first Final Fantasy I played. It was also not the second Final Fantasy I played. I played 7 as a child. You like being spoiled, yeah. Oop, turn down the music instead of... turn out the music instead of turning it down. I played 7 when I was a child, and I played 6 when I was like 22, 23. And then it took a while, until 2018, I'm pretty sure, for me to start playing the series from the start, from Final Fantasy I. 2018, the end of 2018 was when I decided that I want to close this gap in my RPG education, as you would say, and just play all of the Final Fantasy games from start to finish. So I started with Final Fantasy I. And since my plan was to play them in their most original form that I could easily access, I played the US NES release. I have since played this game 3 times. 3 times. Once on my own in 2018. Once when I first started streaming in 2020. It was actually one of the first games I streamed. I think it was like the 3rd or 4th. And then after I stopped streaming, I think I replayed it in late 2022. So it's been a while. But I still have a pretty good grasp on the game. Final Fantasy I really is the definition of an old school JRPG, like party-based, turn-based JRPG. I mean, this and Dragon Quest I are pretty much the games that started the whole genre. So of course, a lot of things that you associate with the genre of JRPGs are present here. The turn-based combat, the overall vibe of the story, the fantasy setting, the grind is also present already. And this game, again, I only played the original NES version, which does have a lot of bugs. But there are so many versions of this game, so many better versions of this game, to be completely honest, that you can't really go wrong playing any of the remakes, as far as I know. Again, I only played the original. What's cool about this game is that it allows you to make your own party. Like later Final Fantasy games, especially 4 and continuing, really put the focus on the characters and have characters integrated into the story. Fixed characters that you have in your party, that have their own quest lines, that have their own personality, their own interactions, which is fantastic. Final Fantasy I doesn't have this. You get thrown onto a screen where you get 4 characters that you can assign a class to, and you can name them, and then you're off on an adventure, which I personally really like, because you can just name the characters after your friends and yell at them when they miss an important attack, which I like to do. And for the first game, this game has a lot of possibilities. Right from the start, there are 6 classes. that you can choose from for your party of 4, and you can use doubles if you want to. So you could make an all warriors party. I wouldn't advise it, but it would be that makes for a huge. That gives this game a lot of replayability, because if you know where you're going, the game's not really that long. So going through with different parties is a lot of fun and can add a lot of challenge. The story is, for the first Final Fantasy game, is really, how you want to say it? It's more complicated than it needs to be. What's really cool I can't even put my mind back to it, but for 1986 when this game came out, or 87, I'm not sure actually anymore. You have the initial objective: rescue the princess from Garland, the evil knight. You go there, you have to fight your way through the wilderness to get to the castle, fight Garland, rescue the princess. Everything seems well. And I wonder how many people back then thought that was the end of the game, because like long narrative games, while Final Fantasy is not the first, they were few and far between. But then a bridge gets built, you get the actual opening cutscene, kinda, and the game map really opens up. You learn of the crystals and of the 4 fiends of the elements, which you get really nicely thrown into the different towns that have different problems, because they are they have these elemental fiends nearby that you have to destroy to reactivate the elemental orbs. Orbs, crystals, kind of interchangeably in this game still. And then up to the very end, it's kind of straightforward, the story, and then it takes a nosedive into the weird territory. First of the last elemental dungeon, the wind dungeon, is a robot-filled sci-fi castle in the sky, basically a spaceship, which already is a wild deviation from the fantasy theme. So that didn't start with Final Fantasy VI. And then in the actual last dungeon, in the last fight, actually, you find out that it's a time loop story where Garland, the first guy you fought, who most people probably would have forgotten about, sent the fiends into the future, which is the time that we're coming from, so that they would send him into the past, so that he would send them into the future, and the loop will continue endlessly until you kill him. It's kind of funny in how over the top it is at the very end and how needlessly complicated they made it to be, but that's kind of charming. I mean, the game is very early on. It's a very early RPG, so stuff like interesting characters and like dynamics. Again, I say that your party members have no personality because they are just blank slates for you to insert yourself or your friends or literally anyone. So a lot of conflict is just externally. Someone is being threatened. The princess is kidnapped. The town is eroding because the Fiend of Earth is nearby. Insert your enemies into your party, yeah, and then kill them, because you can. I think you can in Final Fantasy I attack your own party as well. That would be an interesting playthrough. I don't think you would get very far. But overall, I mean, just that this game gives you the freedom to express, like, to create your own party configuration, that's a lot of fun in itself. The gameplay is very classic, but it suffices and it's really fun. Yeah, why not just kill them off? Obviously, when it comes to like graphics and sound, this game is on the NES, so both are really limited, but you can hear the soundtrack. We had the soundtrack on the entire time. Nobuo Uematsu is just amazing when it comes to creating music within the limitations of a system like the NES, which only has like 3 melodic channels and a noise channel. So pretty much all of the music in this game only has 3 voices, which is amazing what he was able to do in like very classical movement. And it's fun to listen to them, even now. And the cool thing is that you can definitely hear how these pieces would sound with a full orchestra. And there are beautiful orchestrated versions out there of the soundtrack. And obviously later remakes updated the music. And it hasn't lost any of its charm. The graphics are, of course, extremely early NES. The NES was capable, actually, of quite a lot. But in the early times, like, developers weren't really sure what the console was capable of. They had to be trained themselves, and in like later stages and later games, even in the same series, but on the same console, like chips and processors in the cartridges themselves would actually help the processing power to get like better graphics. But the graphics are they suffice for the most part. So there are some weird parts, like chests don't really look that right. But a lot of iconic design started here. I mean, Black Mages still look the same. It's an iconic design that started here. White Mage with a robe, Red Mage. It all started here, and you can all see like the evolution. What's really cool is that later on there's an optional thing where you can get a rat's tail and bring it to is it Bahamut? I think it is King Bahamut. And he upgrades your class, and you can see your characters actually mature. It's a style they haven't really used anymore in like the later games. The later pixelated games, like 1 through 6, is the only one that ditches the kind of chibi style, where the characters have really big heads and really short limbs, and they get more realistic proportions, I guess. They look matured, and especially like Final Fantasy 2 and 3, they don't do that. You just have the first style of graphics. But I really enjoy that. This game is still wonderful to play. There are a billion versions out there that you can pick up. I would recommend, even though I'm a sucker for playing the original versions and I have a high tolerance for like old game design and the flaws of old game design, if you're not up for that, I would highly recommend playing, like, I think the PS1 version, except for the load time, is supposed to be really good. There's also a PSP version, which I think is really good. I don't know what he wanted the rat's tail for, but it's what you bring him as a as like a token of your bravery. I don't know why specifically a rat's tail, but that's what it is. Every single thing that this game has design-wise, that has nothing to do with the problems of the like the technical issues with the original NES version, is still fantastic, and that shines through in the remakes. Like the dungeon design, the world design, the gameplay, creating your party, the different they're not called jobs yet. The different classes, all of that is still amazing. And in the remakes, it's not brought down by the issues with the original NES version, which there are a lot of. Half the game doesn't work. Some spells don't work. Some spells do the exact opposite of what they're supposed to do, because I guess in the code they like flipped a negative and positive value. Half the stats don't do shit, like intelligence is supposed to increase your spell damage. It doesn't do it. So yeah, obviously the original version has a lot of bugs, but that also makes it kind of charming for me. Things a lot of people know, like the Peninsula of Power, like an early grind spot, because a spawn zone for higher level enemies overlapped a bit of like an earlier part of the world map. It's clunky, but that's charming to me. And if that's not your kind of deal, it doesn't matter because it's not baked into the actual game design. Just play an updated version that got cleaned up and has more quality of life changes, because this game doesn't really have any of those, like the original version. But later ones do, obviously. It's a fantastic start to the series. It's definitely, you can definitely still see why this game was successful and spawned one of the most successful video game and longest running video game franchises of all time. And I can only highly recommend, if you're even just like a smidge interested in old school JRPGs, to give this game a shot, because it's still wonderful. And it's not that long, and you can experiment with different parties and just have a good, like, chill time playing this. It's not really a game where you invest yourself into the story a lot, because the story is first kind of basic and then kind of weird. And obviously your characters, your party members don't really have any personality, so you can't really get invested in their story unless you make them up yourselves, which is also fun. But it's still just a fun, chill time. Highly recommended. Just maybe don't play the original version unless you're historically interested as well.